Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder, to the Dev Server second iteration, and today preview of the new German battleship edition, the Scharnhorst. And there are quite a few things to say at the start. First of all, I want to quickly discuss if this is a battleship or a battlecruiser. Then I want to have a look into the tech tree. I want to discuss the float plane, and obviously then run down the armor, the mobility, AA, firepower, etc. of this ship with a rundown of the numbers, with a comparison to its current opposition. And obviously everything is subject to change, so if the numbers then deviate from the live server edition, I will obviously make a separate video. But everybody who can't wait to have a look at this utmost beautiful German battleship, which is probably one of the most good looking ships ever built, then yeah, here is your video. Now, the Scharnhorst has a lot of potential to be very controversial because of it being the most modern battleship, and also it being, with the 1943 edition, being blessed with a lot of AA. And if this all will work out to be the next flavor of the month has to be seen. So let's start, as promised, with a look into the tech tree, and we can see that it comes after the Thunderton, which is actually the first battlecruiser built in Germany, and therefore also you can see it in the stat card, and so also the Scharnhorst has the designation of battlecruiser. But I would disagree on this. First of all, it depends on what definition for quote-unquote a battlecruiser you're looking at, and this is where I highly would say that you would watch the Scharnhorst video, the 5-minute guide from Drachinifel, to which you will find the link in the video description down below. Then the word battlecruiser, or Schlachtkreuzer as it is in German, was never used by the Germans. The Thunderton was a Großkreuzer, a grand cruiser or a large cruiser, and the Scharnhorst, well, it had the speed and the armor of a modern battleship, but the armament was kind of deviating. And the British definition of a battlecruiser was that it was lightly protected and that it had the same caliber guns as contemporary battleships, and yeah, therefore sacrifices armor for speed. But even after the First World War, the lines between battlecruiser and battleship really quickly blurred. So because technology advanced, and so the battlecruisers became obviously faster, but also with significantly more armor, and they still had the big guns. So would they become, from the super dreadnoughts, then the fast battleships? I mean, if you look at HMS Hood, if you look at Repulse and Renown, if you look at the Congos, etc., the definitions fling forwards and backwards, it's a really long discussion. I would say, because of its heavy armor and also it being fast, I would, when you put it into the time frame of 1943, it's definitely a battleship. But again, it's the guns that are so controversial. How good can 11-inch guns or 283mm guns become? And the answer is with the ship, because they are the best. They are better than the Thunderton, and they are also better than the ones of the Graf Spee, which you can see, coincidentally, see here in the background. So I would say there are a lot of things to talk. And another thing is here the float plane, because this is a new mechanic. You not just can start a float plane, in this case, in the German's case, it's the Arado 196, which is equipped with two 50-kilogram bombs, two 20mm, and a single heavy light machine gun. You also can cap points with it, which is very useful at the start of a game, or when somebody just capped, you blow him up, and then you challenge that cap to not be so far away and to have still an influence on the game. Even uncapping or decapping is very useful. And furthermore, below 50 meters, you can lay a smoke screen, either to hide your plane or to hide your ship. So you don't even need to have a screen for that. How useful this will become, how much this will get spammed at the start of the game, we will see. But it's again at least a try of Gaijin to address some of the issues that we have in our forces. But I digress. Let's focus on the ship, on this very beautiful ship, I might say. And so I want to begin with the armor. We will start at the bow with a 70mm icebreaker, and this is already pretty useful versus HE spam to absorb a lot of the HE, which will force you into damage con the flooding. The bulkhead, the first one at this, is relatively weak with only 20mm. Behind this is another one, which we'll see in just a moment. When we go to the main armor belt, we have 350mm of rolled cemented armor, which is really thick, and below the waterline we have 260mm followed by 170mm, and above this for the entire length of the ship basically 35mm, so that is really powerful. Below this we have then internally a second belt, so to speak, with 45mm to stop a lot of the splinters. And when we look at the rear, we can see that we have a 90mm for protecting the gear and a rear bulkhead of 150mm, and on top of this 45mm. The top deck is 50mm thick, not that it probably will absorb any sort of meaningful bombs, especially Fritz X or 1.8 ton bombs, or P8, etc. But it's better than nothing. And when we then look at the internal armor, we can see the mother of all turtlebacks is 105mm at a very shallow inclination, and that is also below the waterline for a big portion. And internally we have a second 40mm vertical belt. And so let's move to the turrets, where the barbettes have also 350mm, which is really strong. The turret faces have 360mm, and the sides vary between 200 to 120, 110, and the roof from 150 to 100mm, together with the conning tower of 350mm. Then we have also big secondaries, the twin-barreled ones with 150mm for, again, the barbette, and then the turret face 170mm, the side 140mm. The rest of the single-barreled heavy secondaries, as well as the heavy AA, have neglectable armor. So that is then, together with the front of the front bulkhead of 150mm, some serious armor. But when it comes to how the damage works currently in naval forces, again, everything is subject to change. This might be the first or the second case, if you look at the Kaiser class, the anti-Tiger armor scheme. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, let me explain. This ship probably works best, even at longer distances, when being completely unangled. Because look at this, there are some regions where a shell could just pen the rather thin armor and then detonate the front magazine, and we don't want that to happen. So unangling it is, and I tested this as far as we can believe the protection analysis or trust it. Even the Huger or the HMS Marlborough with the best AP shell respectively, even from point blank range, when fired horizontally, couldn't penetrate this armor scheme. Now, plunging fire might be a thing, but we don't have the combat distances in War Thunder, even on the larger maps, and the hit probability is also might be possible. Let's find out in battle. So that's the armor. Let's move on to some other statistics. So when we look at the Scharnhorst, it is the heaviest battleship in the game at this very moment, with 37,902 tons of displacement, and with a top speed of 59 kilometers per hour. It is also by quite a bit the fastest, and has, with 1,908 crew, by far the largest crew complement. Then we have to talk about the torpedoes, because this ship has 14, and unlike all the other battleships, it is not in fixed underwater tubes, but they are on the deck in 2 triple launchers, one each side, and you have 4 torpedoes each for reload. That makes a total amount of 14 of the well-known 533mm G7A, which have the same statistics of 14 kilometers max range, with the torpedo mod that gives you a speed of 56 kilometers per hour and a hefty warhead of 358 kilograms. So the best torpedoes with the furthest range, and you have them in turnable launchers. Then let's move on to finally the firepower. The main battery of the Scharnhorst 1943 consists of 9 283 or 11-inch / 54.5 SKC-34 guns. Overall ammunition capacity is 1,350 rounds, considerably more as of the Admiral Graf Spee, and really outstanding is the reload of 17.2 seconds for a fully trained ace qualification crew. And that is considerably faster than a lot of other battleships. Hell, this is almost half the reload of the Imperatrice Maria 1916, and therefore the effective DPM is 31.4 shells per minute, which is not just only twice as much as the Admiral Graf Spee, which only has 6 instead of 9 guns, but also quite a bit more than even the Huger, which has 12 guns. The turret rotation speed is 7.2 degrees per second, which is very nice indeed, and the gun depression with -8 and gun elevation with 40 degrees are also pretty good. Although straight over the bow it is pretty difficult, and the most forward turret won't shoot up until you elevate to a distance that is roughly equal to 7 kilometers of target distance. The elevation speed with 8 degrees is also best in this comparison. So you can see the gun handling is really good. But what are we actually shooting the enemies with? After all, those are just 11-inch guns. So how can they hold up to something like the Marlborough, the Huger or the Imperatrice Maria? Let's find out. Let's start with the stock 283mm Sprenggranate L4,4 Kopfzünder Hochexplosiv, and it travels at a muzzle velocity of 900 meters per second and has 21.49 kilograms of TNT equivalent bursting charge. So the muzzle velocity is nice, but the TNT warhead just doesn't have the same oomph as the other battleships such as the Marlborough and Imperatrice Maria, which go quite a bit above 90 millimeters. And also in the current damage model, it's not really that effective. Likewise, the flak shell version, which just has a time fuse, and that is more or less the same shell, probably very cinematic, but not really that effective. As a tier 1 modification, you can and should unlock the 283mm Panzergranate L4,4 APCBC round, which has a muzzle velocity of 890 meters per second, a bit slower actually than the one on the Admiral Graf Spee, but therefore the shell is 10% heavier with 330 kilograms, containing a 7.21 kilogram bursting charge, and we have therefore a penetration of 579 millimeters at 1000 meters, and at the golden standard of 10 kilometers 422 millimeters are retained. So that is, for that caliber in particular, quite respectable. But when it comes to then the damage effect of the AP shell, it leaves things to be desired. Even the Huger has almost twice the bursting charge, and the actual most used shell in a battleship versus battleship fight, but particular in a battleship versus cruiser fight, is obviously some sort of intermediate between AG and AP, and in this case for the Scharnhorst it is a tier 2 modification, the 283mm Sprenggranate L4,4 Bodenzünder SAP. So it is titled as an SAP BC round, but in the name it is a base use HE round. Nevertheless, the stats say that it has 16.72 kilograms of TNT bursting charge, which is more than twice as much as the AP and significantly enhances the damage, but it drops the penetration to 287 millimeters at 1000 meters, and at 10 kilometers it's 208 millimeters, which is still very much respectable compared to all other ships which have significantly more caliber, but it just lacks the damaging effect. The TNT bursting charge is really the weakness of the ship. And so while this ship might at first glance be unsinkable, it also might at first look like an absolute cruiser nightmare, but when it comes to my experience firing a salvo with the Imperatrice Maria or the Hyuga or the Marlborough at a cruiser, it mostly dies if I get several shell hits in, versus with the Scharnhorst I get off more shells per minute, but I also need them, and due to the current damage model I will significantly lose on kills with this ship. Even destroyers take more than one shell or more than one salvo, and that really hurts the ship. While everything else, the protection, the speed, the AA, the gun handling and the DPM are amazing, the actual alpha strike, which makes the real flavor of a battleship, here is completely lost, and that is a bit of a shame. So that is basically all that you need to know about the Scharnhorst, and I think it's down to you if you think that this ship is amazing or if the ship is hot garbage. I think it's somewhere in between. We will have to wait up until we actually see the performance on the live server. Maybe Gaijin changes something, we'll have to wait and see. As far as my personal opinion is concerned, I can't wait to take the ship out into battle. I can't wait to just be in a battle squadron with some of my teammates and then really focus fire one or another ship and to just simply perforate it, and to be the least favored capital ship target of any sort of revenge bomber. While it might not be 100% safe, at least I have a decent chance, and that makes all the flavor. And also I can't wait and see the hilarious outcomes of some floatplane battles at the start of a game. And yeah, that's it for me today, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this dev server preview, and as usual, if you enjoyed this, why not give this video a like? For you it's just a click, for me it means the world. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want to see more, and as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies and on the waves of War Thunder.